throw. One-on-one, Davis has it. Touchdown! Carolina wins! Carolina is the Coastal Division champion! Javonte Williams to the left of Howe. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howe looking, standing tall, lets it go, man there! Touchdown! Touchdown, Carolina! The pistol, Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson, he tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted! Surratt intercepts it! Holy cow, Carolina's gonna win! And off to Javonte Williams again, pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back, pressure coming, Aguilar floats it up, incomplete! No flags! Head on back up the mountain! Carolina wins it in double overtime! Loftus out of the shotgun, throws to the end zone, incomplete! Incomplete! The bell belongs to us! Carolina wins it 47-45 in double overtime!
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Welcome in, guys. A live edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast coming at you here on a Monday night. And that's right. For the first time in what feels like forever, we are talking about a Tar Heel win. The last month before they went on a bye, no wins. This was not a game that I think a lot of us expected that we would be winning. But alas, here we are. The Tar Heels go on the road, put together their best performance of the season, probably their best performance since the middle of last season, and come away with a 41-14 victory over the Virginia Cavaliers. It is Carolina's first conference win since November 11th of 2023. They lost their last two a year ago, then lost their first three this year. But they get back on the right track with their biggest FBS win since Syracuse last year. That is a significant victory for Carolina. And one that they badly needed. And now has Carolina at 4-4 and at least has you feeling somewhat positive about the direction that they're going in. We'll, of course, talk about what this win ultimately means. We'll talk about the defensive performance, one of the best that we've seen from Carolina in a long time. And even, the offense taking another step forward. Some guys that were a little bit quiet for the most part during the first half of the season, stepping up in this one. We will have some helmet stickers to hand out as well, and a couple of injuries that we'll close you out with on the back end. But, first of all, I mean, how shocking to you was this win as Josh, I bring in my co-host Josh Marlowe, because, I mean, look, man, we've gotten to the point, and we do this just about every year, it seems, with Carolina under Mac Brown, where you just get to a point you're not picking them anymore because they've disappointed you too many times. This was a game that I think we all felt was winnable because of the way that Carolina played in the games against Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech specifically. But I feel like we really needed to see it from them. And to me, I'll tell you right out, I am stunned that they won in the fashion that they did against the Cavaliers.
I think that's the more surprising thing. Am I surprised that they won? No, they've got more talent. They've got more depth, I think, than Virginia in terms of just talented football players. But going into the game, Virginia had been maximizing their potential and getting every ounce out of their roster, where Carolina had once again at 3-4 after starting 3-0 had clearly underperformed. and I think you factor in Mac Brown's struggles off of buys. I think that adds to the element of being surprised in the manner in which they won, where the game was effectively over by the middle part of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even for this defense and this coaching staff, which had lost a lot of faith in itself over the last month or so, it was very evident that Carolina was going to win the game in the early portions of the second half. And I think, the message I've been trying to really stress to myself was, man, in the moment while you're watching your team win, there is frustration that sits in, because if they would have played to any sort of this level the last month, who knows where this team would be, and what feels like a pretty wide open ACC. They would have maybe put themselves in position to really play meaningful football down the stretch as we head towards Thanksgiving. Then you think about everything that the program's been through the last 2 weeks and the literal hell it's been losing a teammate. For Mac Brown, losing a player. For these guys to be able to respond to all that and play the way that they did and really honor the life and the legacy of Tylee Craft, that to me was very, very neat. To the average Carolina football fan, 5-10 years from now, they might not remember that win at Virginia in 2024. To this Tar Heel football fan that I think is understanding we're nearing the end of Mac Brown 2.0, as difficult as it's been at times, this win will always be a little bit sweet for reasons that are bigger than just winning a football game. And so just really happy and proud of the guys to put together that performance, because I don't know if a team in the country needed to win a football game more than Carolina did, with the way the last month had gone on the field and the way the last 2 weeks had gone off the field.
Yeah, I think for them, yeah, because you didn't have the distraction of being able to get back on the field. The bye week, I think, came at the right time, but also for some guys, it probably came at the wrong time, especially guys in that wide receiver room, because when you're that close to a guy like Tylee, who, for a lot of these guys, pretty much everybody in that room, he had been there since they started their career there. So they had relationships with him. And I can only imagine the toll that it probably took on some of those dudes, that they had lost their friend, and that, yeah, you are going out to practice, but this week of practice, we didn't get to look forward to a game. This was, I think, a return to normalcy a little bit, and it was a way to honor him, because we saw the signs that the team is bringing with them on the road now. The Tylee Strong, but more importantly, the keep swinging, which is what he would say to these guys over and over again, what he was doing when he was battling cancer. And I think for those guys, that was a special moment to be able to honor their teammate and come out and put together that type of performance. And that really leads into the first takeaway from the game, because I thought that it was great from that perspective from Carolina. I think there needs to be a tip of the cap, first of all, to Tony Elliott and Virginia, because not only did they wear the Tylee Strong decals on the helmets that we told you about when we previewed this game, Tony Elliott made his guys sit down and write notes to the Tar Heel football players, because a lot of the guys on that team know what it's like to lose a teammate, because they lost 3 just a couple of years ago when Devin Chandler, Laval Davis Jr., and Deshaun Perry, all 3 were murdered during a shooting on UVA's campus when the class was taking a field trip. And so for those guys, they know what it's like to unexpectedly lose a teammate like that. So I thought that was a class act, and I thought that's the best way to start out here, is by tipping the cap to Tony Elliott, because he is a classy guy. No matter what you think of him as a football coach, that was an amazing move from him.
Yeah, Mac Brown, that was the first thing he said in his post-game press conference. And I think it's something that needs to be echoed. Yes, we're rivals. We don't like them. They don't like us. But there are things bigger than football that took place on that field on Saturday afternoon. And I think it just speaks to the type of character that Tony Elliott has and the way that he's leading that program. And those are the guys that, when you get into the industry in the way that we do, where we cover these coaches on a different level. Mm-hmm. We root for storylines. We also root for good people. You want to see good people have success. Tony Elliott is a good man. Does it suck that he might have turned around his job and his job security while beating Carolina last year? Yeah, it does.
Yep.
But I couldn't think of anyone else I'd rather lose to than Tony Elliott, because I think he wins with grace on and off the field. Mm-hmm. And so I think it just speaks to the lessons that he has and the values that he has. And, I think Virginia football fans that are mad about losing to Carolina and mad about getting blown out by Carolina should be able to hold their heads high, knowing they've got a really good man leading their football program. And not every kid and not every program can say that. Not every kid can feel confident they got a coach that's got their best interests in mind for them. Tony Elliott proved on Saturday how unselfish he is. And I thought that was a pretty neat thing to see on Saturday afternoon.
For sure. Another thing that was really neat as we make the transition to the stuff on the field was Carolina's performance up front. That's what really led a dominant defensive performance. And look, you could say whatever you want about the performances that we saw in the first 3 games of the season. I know Minnesota, a lot of people hold that defensive performance in high regard. This was the best defensive performance of this season. And honestly, it's probably the best defensive performance that we've seen under Mac Brown, because this offense for Virginia, I mean, look, they were averaging 28 a game coming in. It wasn't like they were one of the nation's top offenses like you faced in Pittsburgh, but they were a team that was still scoring the ball at a pretty decent rate. You had a quarterback who had done a tremendous job of taking care of the football and really had people believing that this was a group that was going to make a bowl game, because for one, they were going to win this game and then just have to win one game the rest of the season. Well, Carolina's defensive line goes off in this one. 12 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. That's the most sacks in a game since 2000 in a game against Wake Forest. So, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime type of performance for these guys. 27 total quarterback pressures as well. So even when they weren't finishing the play with sacks, you had guys that were pressuring the quarterback all day long. It was one of our biggest keys to this game, was you have to be able to pressure Anthony Calandria, because when you do, you will force interceptions. And this is how great of a performance it was from this defensive line. Not only did this defensive line help register 10 sacks, there was a sack in there from Amari Campbell, so 9 of them from the defensive front themselves. They also picked off both of the interceptions that Anthony Calandria threw in this game. That is unbelievable. And it's truly one of the greatest performances that I've seen from this group. And I'm not going to say we called this, but we talked about, would Kamen Rucker be able to make a difference? And I'm going to tell you right now, he certainly did.
Well, the more important thing is that, yes, Kamen Rucker played phenomenal. We identified going into the game that if Carolina was going to compete on that side, like, it had to start up front, because that offensive line was suspect. And you had to exploit that. Mm-hmm. You gotta really tip your cap to Jeff Collins for getting this group after what's been a hard month or so, to still be bought into the message. And that coaching staff being able to identify a weakness and exploit it and attack it the way that they did, and just lived in the backfield all game long. It was very reminiscent of what they did against South Carolina a year ago, despite, they didn't give up the same number of passing yards in this game as they did in that game against the Gamecocks. But, that was really the difference in the ball game, was Carolina was able to pressure their quarterback the way that we're used to seeing Jacoby Criswell get pressured. And it makes a difference when you get pressure on a quarterback. You force errant throws, you get in the 3rd and longs, and all of a sudden defense becomes easier. And so it was nice to see Kamen Rucker out there, Javari Ritzie with the play of the season for this Tar Heel football team with the thick pick 6. Bo Atkinson was getting in on the action. It was a collective group effort that hopefully, this group can use as a springboard for the second half of the year. Carolina's not going to replicate that type of production week in, week out. But if they can play with that level of urgency and be that physical at the point of attack, it gives this defense a fighting chance every week to hold their own and give this team a chance to win, something they hadn't done the previous month.
Yeah, one of the things that has to be pointed out is that we heard about it multiple times on the broadcast. They were talking about the fact that Jeff Collins was preaching bull rush, but when you do that, you have to make sure that you're containing. So don't get too far upfield, because it feels like that was what guys were doing a lot against some of the mobile quarterbacks that they were facing. We saw it against Haynes King, where they were getting too far upfield. He takes off out of the pocket, picks up first down. Same thing with Eli Holstein at Pittsburgh. Carolina made that adjustment, and that was massive because it changed everything. These guys were in the right position. There was nowhere for Calandria to go, and it allowed them to drop him in the backfield. You're right. We're not looking for this type of performance every single week from this line in terms of the actual production. If you can't get 10 sacks per game, hey, that's understandable. We want to see the pressure on the quarterback. We want it to be strategic too, where running quarterbacks are not just able to take off and pick up, a ton of yards on you. I forget what you said. What was it? Mobile quarterbacks that they faced? It was like the last 10, they've allowed 75 or more rushing yards or something like that.
Last 3 games, they allowed 75 yards or more rushing to the quarterback.
There you go. And honestly, you go back even to last year, there were a lot of times where mobile quarterbacks have killed this defense. And in this game, they did an amazing job of containing a guy that had run for 235 yards in the first 7 games of the year. So he was mobile. This was not a guy that just out of nowhere, he was a pocket passer. No, this was a great job by these guys. And so you got to give them credit. I think Kamen Rucker really made the difference. 8 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 7 quarterback pressures, and an interception. I think the leadership is just something that really shows when he is out there and he's at full strength. And it's not necessarily even the vocal leadership. It's more of the lead by example that is really starting to stand out with him. When he's on the field, this group is just different. And you saw because he stepped up and played the way that he did, you saw Bo Atkinson be more motivated to get after the quarterback. Best game of the year for him with 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 6 quarterback pressures himself. And then I think you just look at the depth that Carolina has with their edge rushers. A guy that's not being talked about enough is Jacoby Cowan. 2 total tackles in this game, but 0.5 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback pressures. He wasn't on the field a ton, but when he's in there, you're starting to see him become more and more consistent at getting after the quarterback. He's done a decent job of containing the run. So I think you really have to give a lot of credit for him, to him, because this group, that's where they're really thriving. Yes, the defensive tackles are having some success, Jahvaree Ritzie stood out in this game for the first time since he reached that 5-sack mark in the second game of the season against Charlotte. But those edge rushers, it was just so much different. And if you get that pressure each week, then you're going to have a chance to win a lot of these games. And one thing, and I'm interested to see what you think about this, I thought we finally saw Jeff Collins. I don't know if it's because he trusted some of these guys on the back end a little bit more, or if he just said, you know what, screw it, I don't care anymore. I'm getting after the quarterback. The blitzing was back. You saw them send Amari Campbell multiple times, Power Echols multiple times. They even occasionally threw a guy like Stick Lane, who had a sack in the game, at the quarterback. I think that's got to be a staple of this group moving forward. I know that your secondary is not the most trustworthy group, but to me, I think at times it's worth the risk of pressure, of getting after the quarterback with a blitz and trusting that your guys are going to be able to get home, especially now that you got a guy like Rucker back.
I mean, I can say this as a fan that watches the game every week. I'd much rather us go down being aggressive than laying back and just getting picked apart. And to me, I think that was kind of the mindset for Jeff Collins was, all right, if they beat us, then they beat us. But we're going to make them beat us because we're going to send so much at them that they're not going to be able to block it. And what I think it does is I think it subconsciously sends a message that also you've got more trust in your guys that, okay, I'm putting you on an island, but I trust you to make a play. And look, it's not always going to happen. There's times where you're going to get beat. That's part of football. Mm-hmm. But what happened the other day was, what we saw the level of aggression on Saturday, what I think we thought we would see all year long. And look, Carolina was really, really good week 1 at Minnesota. And they were never really able to build off of that performance. Like if you go back and you reevaluate the Charlotte and the NC Central tape, like the defensive struggles that we saw were coming. But you had a week to reevaluate, redo some of your, get back to the fundamentals, re-hone in on your technique. And you saw what I think we were hoping to see the majority of the season from Jeff Collins. And you got to give him a lot of credit because after the month that his defense had going into the game, you could have expected him to throw in the towel, but he was able to rally the troops. They put together the best performance of the year. And as much as anything was the biggest reason why Carolina won the game on Saturday by such a large margin.
Yeah. And now it's about carrying that over. I think that's going to be the most important thing because you're not going to have a bye week every week. Now you do after this week. You play this game and then you have another bye week before you go on to Wake Forest, but you can't be banking on that, to be there all the time for you. This has to be something that you build off of week by week and continue to put together strong performances. Now, when it comes to the secondary, we saw some different guys back there. Marcus Allen did not play in the game. Same thing with Jakeen Harris. Both guys were banged up. We found out about that a few minutes before game time, that there was a good chance both of those guys wouldn't play. Will Hardy comes in, plays almost every snap at free safety. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he was involved. He didn't get beat down the field. He was only targeted one time. Did not allow that target to be caught. So I thought, for the most part, did a really solid job. Ty Adams was the guy that played the majority of the day opposite of Elijah Huzzie after Tyrone Stewart started. He played just 9 snaps. Carolina got him off the field. I guess they didn't like what they saw. And Ty Adams targeted just one time in the game as well, while being matched up with a really good receiver in Malachi Fields at certain times during the game on Saturday. So, how are you feeling about this secondary group? I think it's really hard to judge these guys one way or another just because of how good the defensive line performance is. But I guess the best thing is that they weren't getting beat deep. So it wasn't like they were blowing coverages. That's certainly a step in the right direction for Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's because of the consistent pass rush Carolina had or not, the communication was better. There didn't appear to be the breakdowns and coverages that we have been seeing week in, week out. And frankly, if I don't see Marcus Allen the rest of the season, I don't think I would complain. If I don't see Jakeem Harris the rest of the season, I don't think I would complain. I think it makes you wonder what took so long to get Will Hardy and Ty Adams and some other guys on the field and let them see the amount of snaps that they got to see on Saturday afternoon. But, I think the bye week was the perfect opportunity to reevaluate what you were doing, because it just wasn't working. And, we know how high I am on Marcus Allen, but just very inconsistent. And, Carolina needs more consistency out of their secondary because of how ineffective they've been rushing the passer. So, who knows? Maybe Saturday was the beginning of something for that unit too, where if if the defensive line is going to be more consistent, putting pressure on the quarterback, I think Carolina's always got a better chance to hold up their end of the bargain. The most important thing was everything was just cleaner. It was crisp. You weren't having blown coverages. There weren't guys running wide open. And that's been the case even when Carolina's pressured the quarterback, where, if a quarterback was able to make a throw in a clean pocket, it would have been for a big gain. There weren't many times on Saturday I thought Carolina got beat in the secondary. And I don't know when was the last time we've said that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been so used to guys running open. And I mean, look, you go back to the game against James Madison, and one of those routes that was wide open was because of Ty Adams. So, I mean, it's about growth for some of these guys. And that's the thing that I just don't understand, is that really the defensive line unit is the only spot where we've seen them rotate guys. Linebacker, I think it was obvious when they were talking about that group in the preseason, and they were telling us over and over again, we don't have the guys at that position to rotate. Whatever. You told us multiple times that we have the guys to rotate in the secondary, and we're going to do it. And we haven't seen that throughout the year. The one that drives me the most insane is, how are we not seeing more of Will Hardy? And I get it. There have been times where he's been on the field and he's still let up some big plays. But Jakeem Harris has too, and he hasn't done anything really in the run game. It has not been there for him. So I think at this point, that's probably the guy where if I didn't see him the rest of the year, I'd be okay with it. I'm going to be honest with you. I would rather see Will Hardy and figure out if Will Hardy is part of the solution in the secondary or no. Marcus Allen, I'm a little more inclined to see him. I mean, trust me, I hate how hit and miss he can be at times, but he does have his moments where he's really solid on the outside. And the thing with Ty Adams is, we saw that game earlier this year where he ends up getting beat. I don't think that this is a situation where all of a sudden you're going to start Ty Adams and just not play Marcus Allen. What I think it does show you, though, is that you need to have confidence in a guy like Ty Adams where, hey, if Marcus Allen makes a mistake, if Marcus Allen takes a penalty, if he gets beat on a deep route, take him out of the game, put Ty Adams in, let's coach him up a little bit on the sidelines. We'll have Ty in there. He should be able to hold it down. That's what I think this game showed you with those guys in the secondary, and I'm hoping that's the thinking. I really am. Am I positive that it is? No. I doubt they're going to do that. When these guys are healthy, it'll most likely go back to being the same thing that it was before. But I don't know. Maybe this was what they needed. Maybe this was what Jeff Collins needed to see. And maybe eventually, even if they're not subbing, maybe he'll be yelling into that walkie-talkie for those guys to sub onto the field. Last thing that I think we need to talk about on the defensive side of the ball was really just the great mental mindset that this group took into this game. Because first drive of the game, Virginia drives right down the field. you're thinking, here we go again. This is much of the same. This is going to be a horrible defensive performance from this group. You get bailed out because of a high snap that makes it 2nd and goal from somewhere in the teens. And then from there, Virginia ends up having to settle for a field goal. But this group responded in a way that we have not seen them do since those first 3 games of the season. They came out and put that first drive behind them, and for the rest of the day looked like the unit that we saw against Minnesota. I think there's a lot of credit needs to be given to these guys, because it would have been really easy for this group, as we've seen them do multiple times, to just say, here we go again. We're just going to roll over and hopefully our offense is ready to go today. This group did not. They fought back and they put together an outstanding performance that we will be talking about for a while moving forward.
Yeah, they just kept swinging like Tylee Craft would have wanted them to do. And I think one thing that we as fans got to maybe adjust our minds to when watching football is, dude, play calling is so good now with these scripted drives. Teams are going to come out and score, and they're going to move the ball because they're just so well prepared for that initial drive. It's what do you do after that? And what Carolina didn't do was they didn't allow that drive to kill them on the next drive or on the next drive or on the next drive. They regrouped. They made adjustments, and they did whatever was necessary to not allow Virginia to move the ball up and down the field. And there's no denying that Carolina's defensive issues has been from a lack of talent. It's been a mental thing as well. I mean, when you've been as bad as Carolina's been defensively for a decade, you have guys like you and me saying they're not good enough defensively. They know what's good. That stuff seeps in. And so, I think there was just a message to rally behind in terms of Tylee Craft, that no matter what, man, you just got to keep playing. You got to keep fighting. It's the next play. It's the next down. It's the next series. And they did that. They did that very well on Saturday. And if they can start doing this more often, we're realizing, look, man, sometimes we're going to get beat on a play. We're going to commit a penalty. But it doesn't have to derail the rest of the game. Then who knows, man? Maybe we could really see this defense round into the form that we thought they were going to be going into the year, and especially after we left that Minnesota game.
Yeah, and if they can do that, it's going to help this offense, which you saw a much smoother performance on Saturday. And I think a lot of that had to do with, again, and I'm not trying to brag, but these are things that are important. That's why they're keys to the game when we put them out there. 1st and 2nd down success. I thought that was a big difference in this game. One, I thought that you have to give credit to Chip Lindsey for sticking with the run game, being stubborn about it. And 2, you got to give credit to this offensive line, which did a much better job run blocking than they did that previous month before the bye week. Because, Amarian Hampton was still getting to 100 yards. Most of that was because he was just having to run through guys either at the line of scrimmage or sometimes even behind the line of scrimmage. This group did a much better job. And amazingly, it wasn't really first down. If you go back and look at it, a lot of their work was done on 2nd down, but it was because Chip Lindsey said, okay, we're going to still run on 2nd down. We're not going to panic because we had an incompletion on 1st down. We had a short run on 1st down. We're still going to run the strength of our offense here. And I thought that made a huge difference because Carolina faced just 5 third downs of 7 yards or longer in this game. Of the 14 third down conversions that they had, it's not a coincidence to me that with those shorter third downs, Carolina was 50% on their third downs, a much better rate than they had been coming into the game.
Yeah, it's amazing what an offense can do when it doesn't have to chase points, and they can actually run an offense and call plays to set up stuff as the game moves along. And you look at some of the situational football that Carolina excelled in, screens, whatever it was because they were able to set that stuff up. They weren't having to dial up touchdown plays because their defense was giving up points left and right. There wasn't the pressure to score every single time. So even if they didn't score, you could still look at a drive that was productive because it was setting stuff up for the possessions later on in the ball game. And look, second down is the most important down. Like, yes, first down is really important, but what happens on second down determines how you play third down. And, sometimes you go from second and long or to second and short to, then you're picking up first downs. And so I thought the commitment to the run game, which is the strength of this offense, made it easier on Jacoby Criswell to just manage down and distance and not ask him to do too much. And the fact that you limited the 3rd and 7 and longers mean that Virginia couldn't send 7-8 guys after him.
Yep.
And I think Jacoby Criswell has proven that you give him time in the pocket, he's going to find someone to throw the football to. And so I think Saturday was the perfect blend of what this offense is. It's a run-first offense, a ball control offense that throws off of their run game. And Carolina did that on Saturday. They did it very efficiently, still put up a lot of points and a lot of yards, but did so in a manner that did not put their defense at risk for being overexposed. And when you can control a game like that and still put up the amount of points you did, it's hard. It's going to be hard for you to get beat.
Yeah, I want to apologize to anybody if you're hearing background noise. That is my father currently complaining about the lack of tackling in the Giants game that is currently going on. It's pretty bad. But yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to Jacoby Criswell, I thought once again he proved that he is definitely the guy. Like, anybody that's still doubting this dude, there were so many people that were critical of us when we were saying, really after his first start, this guy's got it, especially if you protect him. Well, now I think this performance really showed it. If you protect him, if you put him in third and manageable situations, which any quarterback is going to succeed a lot better in that. It doesn't matter who it is. 19 of 30, his best completion percentage so far of the year. 293 yards, which I think were much more efficient than the game against James Madison, where he just piled up those yards because, yeah, they were playing a little bit off of guys, really just trying not to get beat by the deep ball. And, I mean, he was getting the ball so often and having to throw to try to keep him in the game that he had no choice. He had 2 touchdowns in this game, but the most important difference in this game, he didn't use his legs as much, but he didn't turn the football over once. That was the cleanest game that we've seen him play, and that is the most important step for him. If he can keep the turnovers out of his game, he has every tool that he needs to be able to succeed, because I thought it was a much more accurate game from him. He did miss a deep ball early in the game, but I like that they went back to it in a crucial time, right before halftime. They go back to it. He throws a beautiful deep ball to J.J. Jones that was either going to result in a pass interference or a catch. J.J. Jones does a great job of high-pointing the ball and coming down with it. This was a really great performance for Jacoby Criswell. And, guys, I know you want to see Bryce Baker immediately when he comes in. The best thing for Carolina right now is that this dude continues to grow and can be Carolina's quarterback for not only the remainder of this year, but moving into next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw from Criswell was a guy that when he's not having to put the ball in harm's way because Carolina needs points, a guy that's going to make smart decisions, that's going to execute the offense, and really play at a high enough level for Carolina to still maybe be the better team more often than not on Saturdays. And I was just glad for him after what he'd endured the last month, where, I mean, just, all of a sudden it's not only playing, but starting and giving Carolina a chance to win, but not being rewarded. I mean, who knows what that win will do for his confidence moving forward, because now he can look himself in the mirror and say, I did everything I could to help to give my team a chance to win. And we did win. Well, I played clean football. I played within the offense, and we still put up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points. So I think it was a feel-good day for Jacoby Criswell, a guy that has played well enough to be a winning quarterback, but has been let down by his defense. But that wasn't the case on Saturday, and he got to taste. He got to taste what victory feels like in the South's oldest rivalry.
I thought that was the most important thing. I think this team really needed a victory because there was a 4-game losing streak. No one needed this victory more than Jacoby Criswell, because after a while, when you keep doing things right and the results are not there, eventually you're going to say, what's the point of killing myself if it's just going to result in this team losing? So I thought it was very important because it shows him that you're doing the right things. You are progressing each week, and finally it results in a win. And not only does it result in a win, your defense helped you out, and you get a blowout victory as your first victory as a starting quarterback at Carolina. So a bunch of credit given to him. That was a tremendous performance. A lot of credit has to go to the veteran receivers, though, too. J.J. Jones, tremendous in this game. 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. Career high in receiving yards, finds the end zone twice, and 4 of his 5 catches went for 25 yards or more. So not only was he making plays, he was giving Carolina the explosive plays that this offense has lacked for most of the season. And while he was the guy that shined the brightest, you can't not bring up Nate McCollum. 5 targets in this game, 4 catches, 57 yards. That was huge for a team that did not have their leading receiver in terms of targets and receptions in this game. With Bryson Nesbitt out, guys needed to step up. And yeah, we look towards John Copenhaver, who had 4 catches in this game, was targeted 6 times as well. But these wide receivers, these veterans, stepped up when they needed to, and hopefully they can continue to do this moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that was the challenge. We challenged him going into the game. Hey, Bryson Nesbitt's down. Who's going to step up? Who's going to keep swinging? Who's going to be tough enough to help this football team? And J.J. Jones had a big-time game. Nate McCollum has had an uneven year, but, whenever he hits in a big way for Carolina. I think it helped that Carolina was able to run the football, so you weren't asking these guys to make play after play after play, but they're going to need these guys. You're going to need J.J. Jones to be as dynamic as he was after he catches the football making plays. You're going to need Nate McCollum being that guy that Jacoby Criswell can look at on 3rd and 7 to win your one-on-one route. We know that what Kobe Paysour is capable of. We've said it all the years since Mac Brown's been here. Talent isn't an issue in that room. They've got guys that can make plays, and they've got guys that are ready to replace the talent that goes off to the NFL. This year hadn't been necessarily the case. It's been a little bit uneven for a bunch of different reasons, but you saw what this room is capable of doing on Saturday. I mean, if they can do this down the stretch and Carolina can run the ball the way they did and they can manage down and distance, you can see these wide receivers elevate their game to the next level, and that opens the path for this team making a bowl game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's what you're hoping for, is that this offense, now that maybe the defense is providing a little resistance, it flows a little bit smoother. And these are the guys that can help out your quarterback, because, they were a little bit quiet at times to begin the season, but that's a group that we've seen when Carolina can get explosive plays offensively. It's a game changer, and it's what takes that offense to the next level. All right, time to give out some helmet stickers. It's been a while since we've been able to do this because Carolina hasn't won a game and it just hasn't felt appropriate to give them out after losses. So who do you give your first helmet sticker to? We're going to go back and forth here, just off the top of the dome. We can't repeat the same name if you've already said it. Who is your first helmet sticker going to?
I'll go with Jahvaree Ritzie because he had the play of the year for this team with the thick pick six. A guy that I really challenged coming off the bye week to look like the guy we saw the first couple of weeks where he was just wrecking shop. And, you saw his athletic ability, what made him the player that he was coming out of high school, which led to the expectations that we had for him upon arriving in Chapel Hill. But, he bounced back in a big way after less than stellar last month or so. So, my first helmet sticker, Jahvaree Ritzie, after his thick pick six on Saturday afternoon.
I'll go with the other layup here. How do you not give it to Kamen Rucker? 8 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 7 quarterback pressures, and an interception. This dude did everything. He's the heart and soul of this defense. When he's out there, this is a different group. They needed him on Saturday to be as close to fully healthy as he was in the season opener, and he made a massive difference. He really generated everything for this defense. And if he can put together these types of performances down the stretch of the season, again, it doesn't need to be the production of 3 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss, but just getting in the face of the quarterback, pressuring some of the better guys that Carolina is going to see down the stretch of the season, I think that could make a huge difference. So first helmet sticker of mine going to Kamen Rucker.
Yeah, the next one I'll hand out I'll go to J.J. Jones because he had, from a production standpoint, with the best game of his career, it felt like every time Carolina needed to make a play, that's where Jacoby Criswell was looking, and J.J. Jones was there to make it. This is a guy that led Carolina in receiving yards last year. Needed to do a much better job finding the end zone. He did that on Saturday. So my second helmet sticker will go to J.J. Jones.
Yeah, my second one, I'll give it to Bo Atkinson. I got to stick on that defensive line because this dude put together the best performance of the season. This was what we thought we were going to see from him this year. We heard how he was playing so well in preseason practice. We thought, okay, especially with the struggles that we've seen at times from Des Evans in his career with consistency, maybe Bo Atkinson is the guy that steps up. He's played a decent amount of snaps, but the production just hasn't been there. This was the game that might be the breakout game for him to finish this season strong. 4 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 6 quarterback pressures. This is another guy that can really unlock Carolina's pass rush. And the fact that he was as effective as he was, it allowed Carolina to have that 3 defensive end look that they've wanted to use so much this year. There were times where he was on the interior, Des Evans was on the interior, and I thought that really worked for Carolina because you saw it multiple times on third down where because those guys were there, they were just straight up pass rushing. Those guys from Virginia had an issue dealing with them. Big difference if he can perform like this down the stretch of the year. So have to give him my second helmet sticker.
Yeah, the last one, I'll give it to the coaching staff because they put together, I think, collectively the best game plan, offense, defense, special teams. I think Mac Brown, a guy that was, I think, motivated to get a win after the last couple weeks or so, having the pulse of this team and, telling them, guys, we're in a position to finish the way that we haven't finished the last couple of years, despite the way the last month of the season has gone. And so for a staff that has been criticized, and rightfully so, you love it when they answer the bell. And I think that's what the staff did top to bottom on Saturday, helping put together one of the more satisfying wins of Mac Brown's second stint in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, Greg Ward, who watches us on Facebook weekly, he also says that the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. There's no question about that. My last helmet sticker, I'll go with Amari and Hampton, reaching the 1,000-yard mark, another 100-yard rushing performance. And here's the thing. Most people are not going to bring him up at this point because that's just the norm for Amari and Hampton. Unless he does something spectacular, people aren't going to be blown away with his performance. But this is the type of steady production that he is bringing Carolina and that they need. And so he deserves just a ton of credit because it would be very easy for him to have mailed it in when he realized that this season was not going in the direction that he had hoped. But he continues to step up and perform week after week. He's a leader of this team, and he's still the driving force for this offense. I know that Criswell had a great performance in this game, but he gave you 26 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what you need from your running back consistently if you want to win games. So credit to him. And then I think just, from both of us, a helmet sticker needs to be given to Tylee Kraft, man. I know that he was not able to give the impact that he wanted to give on the field because of the cancer. But I'm going to tell you right now, that dude right there is the reason that Carolina won this game on Saturday, because he was such a great guy. He was so inspirational that his teammates said, there is one thing that we have to do today, more than anything, find a way to win this game. It doesn't matter how you do it. It's that you come out, you keep swinging, and you find a way to get that victory. So a helmet sticker to Tylee, an amazing performance from above, young man, because that one was for you. The last thing that we'll talk about here is now with this victory, how important was this victory for Carolina in terms of what it could mean moving forward? Because now you've got Florida State coming up. You then go on a bye week and then close with that 3-game stretch that we talked about. One at home against Wake Forest. You then go back on the road against Boston College, and then you're back in Kenan Stadium to take on the NC State Wolfpack. This is a schedule that, as I said the other night on last Thursday, when I was going through and saying what I wanted to see from this team in the second half of the year, it felt like you could find a way to get 3 wins from this schedule, because the teams that are on the schedule right now are not playing at their best. I think now that becomes even more realistic because you beat arguably the best or second best team on that schedule, and you did it on the road. So what do you think this does for Carolina's potential to make a bowl game?
I think it just re-energizes everything around them because, history would suggest that with the circumstances on and off the field, that's a game Carolina loses. It's about the time of the year where everything starts to go to crap, and you go on the road, a place where this program has historically struggled, and you won in dominant fashion. And now the pathway to a bowl game is there, and in what college football has evolved into. Bowl games don't mean as much as they've meant in years past, but, even if Carolina is going through a head coaching search, those practices will be invaluable for what this team could look like next year. And it could really help, develop some of the younger talent that's on the roster. That's the importance in terms of getting to a bowl game. And so, if with the way Florida State season has gone, I don't think we're asking too much for you to win at Florida State. You practically own Wake Forest, although they play you tough because they're a rival as well. And then you got to go to Boston College, and then you get NC State at home. And who knows, maybe, NC State's in the position you are, fighting for their bowl lives, and that could be Mac Brown's final home game, maybe one more thing to rally behind. So I think what it does is is it gives you a reason to stay invested in this team the rest of the season.
Definitely.
And B, the path to a bowl game is a lot more clear than I think we thought going in when we predicted Carolina to lose in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I think you're right. It re-energizes the team, and just as importantly, it re-energizes the fan base. It gives this fan base hope that you can actually make it to a bowl game. And that's, at this point, that's all we're asking for. Like, I mean, Greg Ward said earlier that he thinks that if enough things break right, maybe they find a way to finish 8-4. That's asking a lot. Okay, I'm not trying to go there. If they do, great. You did what I asked you to do, which was, hey, if you're gonna have a stretch of the season where you slow down and struggle, do it at the start of the year and finish strong. That would be phenomenal. But I think just getting to a bowl game would be the best thing right now for Carolina football, because you would close it out with 6 straight bowl games under Mac Brown. And you would have a chance. I think everybody is asking for the same thing. At the least, find a way to win that game against NC State at the end of the year. That would have us satisfied. So I think this gives you an opportunity to think that that's going to happen, where before this week, and if they would have lost that game, you would have probably just been riding on false hope. Now, no, there's reason to believe that can actually happen. And that's extremely important when it comes to this fan base. I'm hoping, especially if they win the game against Florida State, that there will be a decent amount of people in the stands for that game against Wake Forest. I think that would be a reason to go back out and watch this football program, even if you believe that Mac Brown needs to be gone at the end of the season. We'll close this edition out with just a couple of injury notes for you guys. 2 guys determined that they will be out for the season. Offensive guard Jonathan Adorno most likely means that his Tar Heel career is over. I'm not sure if he's going to have another year of eligibility. I don't know how much they played him on special teams, but he is done. And then Leroy Jackson, the true freshman defensive lineman, is also out for the season. They did not designate what type of injuries those were for those guys, but hate to hear that both of those guys are done for this year. Meanwhile, Marcus Allen, Jakeem Harris, the 2 guys in the secondary that we told you were out for this game, they are being monitored this week. And I think that is important, because we have heard a couple of times when they have mentioned guys that they were expecting to play the next weekend, they would use the term working them back this week. The fact that they're saying being monitored, I think, tells you that's at least one of those injuries may be a little bit more serious. So we'll keep tabs on that one and let you guys know if anything changes moving forward as Carolina gets ready to prepare for the game against Florida State. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Guys, make sure you head over to the website, heeltoughblog.com. A bunch of great stuff up there for you guys to check out, including the recap from the game. I'm actually going to put that one out. I tweeted that out the other day, and it was during the scrimmage, or not during the scrimmage, but it was right before Carolina's exhibition game against Johnson C. Smith. I'll send that back out for you guys just so you can read a little bit more about my takeaways from the game. And then we'll have you covered throughout the week. I'm going to write an article on those injuries, the impact that those could have for Carolina moving forward. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. Carolina with a new offer in the 2025 class that we'll be monitoring, a 3-star wide receiver from here in the home state that is committed to Wake Forest that Carolina is now going to try to flip. This win could certainly help those causes out a little bit. So we'll keep tabs on that and let you know if anything happens on that front. And then, of course, we'll be getting you prepared for Carolina's game later in the week against Florida State, a 3:30 kick on the ACC network, which we found out over the weekend. Meanwhile, on the basketball side of things, we are right around the corner from the start of the year. Next Monday, this time when we're recording the podcast, Carolina will be in the first half against Elon. That's right. Get the coffee brewing. It's going to be a 9 o'clock tip. But Josh is going to have you covered with a preview of that game, Of course, he'll have you covered with the recaps all throughout the season. I'll jump in there a few times, especially when the team is out in Maui, because it's going to be incredibly late. Josh is on the morning show now, so I'll step in for some of that stuff. But for the most part, it'll be him taking you through basketball season on the website side of things. And also make sure that you subscribe to the Four Corners podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Same thing for the Heel Tough Blog podcast, especially if you are a listener to us. We would really appreciate that, because you don't want to miss any of the great episodes that we're going to have coming up on the basketball side of things with the season beginning, and of course on the football side of things as we keep moving forward throughout the rest of this year and then into what could be a very interesting off season. Best thing to do every morning when you wake up, head over to the Heel Tough Blog website, check in for the latest news and opinions, and head over to wherever you listen to your podcast and make sure that there is not a new episode that you need to listen to. So once again, that wraps it up for tonight. Want to thank everybody for watching and listening. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. And as always, go Tar Heels.